people today. They could spend half their lives over 50. That's a lot of living. So it helps to have a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. A friend like AARP. So your health lives longer.
This is just slow-mo karate?
Just slow-mo karate.
Your money lives longer.
I just bought that.
I just sold that.
And your happiness lives longer. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Join today.
Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's so wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome, and let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Hello AARP world, it's Chef Amanda Pyle here, and I am coming to you from Morton, Illinois. Today, we are going to be making some foods that fall underneath the label of Southern Charm. So we're going to go down south today, and we are going to make two of my staple favorites that I love to make for my family. First off, we're going to do a fun spin on cornbread and add some sweet potato to pack in some serious flavor. And then after that, we're going to do a fun spin on chicken fried steak, turning it into chicken fried steak nuggets. And of course, we're going to do a delicious pan gravy to go alongside of that for dipping. First of all, let's go ahead and get started with our sweet potato cornbread. Right now I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees, and I've got all of my ingredients on deck and ready to go. So let me just talk about what I have here. First off, in my bowl, I have already pre-measured out my cornmeal. You could use white or yellow here, but today we're selecting yellow cornmeal. Brown sugar, again, light or dark works, whatever's in your cabinet. Some cinnamon, nutmeg, some salt, some baking powder, some baking soda, and then of course some all-purpose flour. And if you're going gluten-free or have to have a gluten-free diet, it's absolutely okay to substitute in an all-purpose gluten-free flour there in its place. So the first thing I'm going to do is just start to whisk all of these things together. Got a couple little crunchies in my brown sugar, so I'm just going to break those apart. I've recently taken to storing my brown sugar in the refrigerator. I don't have to worry about it getting hard. It seems to stay soft for a lot longer. And if you don't go through it even that fast, you can even store it in your freezer. If you're like me, you don't use a ton of brown sugar, so it's just that thing that seems to always be getting a little bit crunchy on me, and it's a bit harder to deal with. All right, so now we have our dry ingredients here. We're going to go ahead and set those aside for a second, and we're going to work on our wet ingredients. So I've got my 2 eggs, just a large egg. I've got some whole milk here. It could be oat milk, it could be almond milk. If you have a dairy sensitivity, that's okay. And then I've got my vinegar. So today we're going to be making our own buttermilk from scratch. I just hate buying buttermilk at the store because I typically only make one recipe with it and then it sits in my fridge until it spoils. So instead I like to make it fresh and make it by myself with limited ingredients. So if I need 2 cups of milk for this recipe, which I do, I like to have about a tablespoon of white vinegar for each cup of milk that I need to have in total. So I added my 2 tablespoons of vinegar first. Then I'm going to add my milk until I get to the 2-cup amount. As this sits here, it's going to get a little thick, maybe a little curdly. You can can even give it a little stir. Already it's starting to thicken. And this is going to make our bread light and fluffier. It's also going to add some acid to our bread, which is going to lighten it up as well. Next, I'm going to do my eggs. I do like to do my eggs on a flat surface before putting them into the bowl. I just find that if I'm going to get a shell, it's probably going to come from cracking it on the side of the bowl and the shell's going inside of the egg. So I like to do it on a flat surface. Also, if I got any shells in the bowl, it would be much easier to pick them out this way instead of going into something that was already mixed with other ingredients. Just going to whisk my eggs. I'm going to give my buttermilk a stir. I don't know if you can see this, but it's really thick. It's nice and thickened. And we've made a perfect buttermilk here. So I'm just going to stir that into my eggs. And this is going to become my wet ingredient part of my cornbread. My next step is to add that pop of flavor that we're talking about that makes this cornbread a little bit unique. Nothing says the South like sweet potatoes. I find these to be so comforting. The perfect, just nice kind of hug your family member when you eat it kind of dish. Cornbread is already that in itself. Today we're going to add a little bit of baked sweet potato to our cornbread to bring even more awesome moisture and just a little pop of flavor. So these are really tiny sweet potatoes. I baked up some extra so that later on I can throw those in the oven with marshmallows and pecans and have them for dinner as a side dish. So I'm going to pack some sweet potatoes into my 1 cup measuring cup, which is how much I need for this particular recipe. And sweet potatoes are so easy to bake, even easier than baked potatoes. I put them on a sheet pan that's been lined with parchment or wax paper or foil because they are going to leak some pretty serious syrup that's kind of hard to clean up. So I put something down on my sheet pan and I bake them until they start to release that syrup, until a knife pokes through and it's perfectly soft inside. Usually this takes about 45 minutes to an hour depending on the size of your sweet potatoes. Typically a medium-sized sweet potato will yield about a cup. All right, here's the cup that we need for this recipe, so now we can set these on the back burner. And the next step is to add our sweet potato mash here into our wet ingredients, and then we're going to fold them all and do our dry ingredients. And I'm just going to use my hands to really mash those up and make sure they're nice and soft. And any stringy elements that I find in there, I'm going to pull those out or break them apart. That way I don't have some weird textures going on or some sweet potato that didn't get incorporated perfectly into my cornbread. It's a messy situation. Somebody's got to do it. So that looks pretty good. Give me 1 second to wash my hands and I will be right back. All right, here we are. And now we're going to whisk all of this together. Now you may be tempted to add seasonings in here right now, but don't worry, we put it all into the flour. If you remember, it had cinnamon and nutmeg inside. So this is going to have some amazing flavor. All right, and now here we go. I love baking this in a cast iron skillet. Nothing says the South like a cast iron skillet, so both of our dishes are going to be made in cast iron today. And so what I like to do with that is first start out with a little bit of butter in the pan, and I'm actually going to brown the butter. So I'm going to let the butter just kind of melt down until it begins to brown. Butter has natural milk solids in it. When you cook those milk solids, they will turn brown and nutty and have a delicious flavor that I think just amps up baked goods like no other. I make brown butter icing. I make brown butter whipped butter. I make lots of things with brown butter. In fact, if I think it'll taste better just having the butter browned, I usually just do it in most recipes. So I get that going, and we're not going to waste the butter. We're going to actually pour it into our batter here in a second. You could always replace the oil in a dish with brown butter just to add a bit more flavor. And again, we don't want it to turn black. We just want it to barely hit brown, and then we're going to turn it off. Pour it into our wet ingredients, add wet to dry, and then at that point, the pan will still be a little bit hot. The pan will have been seasoned with this delicious brown butter on the outside, and when we put our cornbread into the pan, it's going to immediately crust the edges because the pan is still hot. So that's kind of my goal here. I'm gonna roll this butter around, just making sure I'm getting all those side edges as well. And it already smells amazing. You can see it start to foam up in the pan. That means those butter salads are officially cooking. Let me move that for you. And now, not only do I smell this nutty aroma in the air, but I'm also starting to see the butter actually change in color, which is what we're looking for. I don't know if it shows up on camera, but as you can see, our froth has little brown specks in there. Looks absolutely amazing. So we're almost to the point where we're going to stop it. We don't want it to go too far. But in the meantime, we'll make a little well in the center here of our dry ingredients. And then I'm going to use a folding method next to start folding this in. The butter is officially done. Smells wonderful. Into the skillet it goes. And now I've turned off my heat, but I want to try and get my batter into the pan before the pan cools off too much, and then it's going straight into the oven. Now you might be asking, why am I folding instead of just whisking it all together? Well, first of all, it's all going to get stuck into the inside of the whisk, and it's going to make a mess. But also, sometimes we can overmix when we do something like that, and then our breads don't rise up, or our cakes and muffins don't rise up as much as we want them to. And so instead, we're going to try and keep these air bubbles intact, and if you could be here with me, you could see them literally in the batter here. And so instead of over mixing and mixing all those nice air bubbles out, which we're getting a lot of that from our buttermilk that we added, I'm going to try and keep those intact so I get a super fluffy cornbread. Sweet potato cornbread. So this recipe is so easy that you could make it for somebody that you're taking care of if you're their caretaker, but it's also a great recipe to make together. Very simplified ingredients. And like I said, I made some extra sweet potatoes, that way I could have those for dinner later. All right, into the pan. I'm using like a 9-inch skillet. If you don't have a cast iron, that's okay. Use your cake pan at home. Use your bread pan. But again, we're going Southern Charm here, so I wanted to kind of fit in with the theme. And as you can see, that fit perfectly. All right, let's have a look at that. Beautiful. And then we're going to pop that into the oven. I'm going to set my timer for 35 minutes. I'll be right back, guys, and then we'll get started on that chicken fried steak. Welcome back, AARP. Sorry for that quick break. Right now we've got our sweet potato cornbread in the oven baking, and so we are going to enjoy that with some chicken fried steak today. And we're going to do a fun take on our chicken fried steak today by turning it into chicken fried steak nuggets. I absolutely love this. Okay, so I've got all of my seasonings here. which I'm going to use to season my flour up with. I've got my cube steak. So yes, this is already a tenderized meat. And depending where it comes from, you might not need to tenderize it again, but I usually just do give it another little pound. And I've got my meat mallet on deck, and I'm actually going to use the teeth side of my meat mallet, whereas if I were doing you know, something else, I might use the flat side, but for this particular application, we're going to do our teeth side. And then I've got everything that I need to make my breading station. I've got some eggs, which are going to get mixed with some milk here soon. I've got my flour, which I'm going to season up here with some thyme, some salt, some pepper, and some smoked paprika. And then I've got a place where after I'm doing the breading, my steak is going to go into. Then here for the stove, I've already got my olive oil into my cast iron skillet. I'm going to add a tiny bit of butter to that as well when it's time to start the frying process. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut up my chicken fried steak into chicken fried steak nuggets. Now again, you might be taking care of somebody at home who, or in their home, who has a bit of trouble using a knife and fork. So this is a great way to have chicken fried steak a little bit easier to eat, fun for the kids too. They might even learn to enjoy this dish if they know it's in a nugget form. If it's anything like my kid, if it's a nugget, she'll usually at least give it a try. So I really like using scissors because this meat is a little bit tough, and I find my knife kind of catching on it more than doing what I want it to do. So a good nice pair of sharp kitchen shears ought to do the trick. And I am trying to pay attention to the size of my nuggets so that they all end up being kind of the same, if possible. That way they cook evenly in the pan. This turns this dish into something that you're having on your table on a Tuesday night into an appetizer if you wanted to serve it for a holiday or even really any season. Makes it a bit more fun, gives it just kind of a different attitude. All right, so we've got most of this cut up. And the chicken steak itself isn't evenly proportioned, so you might not get perfect nuggets. That's all right. Just remember that when you're cooking, that they might be slightly longer for the bigger ones and slightly smaller or less time for the smaller ones. All right, so now that we've got all of our nuggets kind of cut out, I'm just going to take my meat mallet here and I'm just going to give it a little bit of extra tenderizing, and as you can see, that's going to make it even bigger after that. Maybe we'll cut that one in half one more time. I want it to still be kind of a bite-sized thing. A little pound. Excited to be able to have this for lunch today. That's the nice part about making these videos, is really we get to cook for ourselves and enjoy it. But we'll be thinking of you as we eat it. All right, I think that's enough to kind of get our point across here. So we will do this later and start with this for our video. All right, next step, ooh, I missed one. Next step here is going to be to season up our flour. So I just have some regular all-purpose flour here, but you, of course, if you're practicing a gluten-free diet, could choose an all-purpose gluten-free flour. I think it would work just fine. I'm going to start out with pepper. Okay, and that's kind of up to you how much you want to do. And then a little smoked paprika. Now, I like smoked paprika over regular paprika. But if you don't like the smoky flavor, you could certainly swap that out. A little bit of thyme. These are thyme leaves, but ground thyme would work too. I just would use a little bit less. It's a little bit stronger and more potent. And then we're going to use this lemon thyme salt, because I thought that a hint of lemon would be nice to kind of brighten this up a little bit. Any seasoning is going to work fine. Oregano would be great on here. Basil would be great on here. So now this becomes the breading portion. Just gives that a little mix. I do like a shallow dish for the breading part. Perfect. All right, next I'm going to crack my eggs. Broken up. And we're going to add about 2 cups. Is that how much? 3/4 of a cup, sorry. 3/4 of a cup of milk to our eggs. And I do like to season every single layer of my food. So even though I know my flour has salt and seasoning in it, doesn't mean you can taste the seasoning in the meat. So I'm also going to do a little salt and pepper on top of my meat. So that I can add those layers of flavor. I'm making this for my grandpa tonight. He just got out of the hospital. So he loves pepper, so I added a little bit extra. Flip this over, do the same. I also am pressing that seasoning into the meat a little bit, just to make sure it sticks. I think I got them all there. A little bit more on both sides. Now we've got every layer of our breading station all seasoned up and ready to go. And so I'm going to go ahead and fire up my heat here. I've got 1/4 or 3/4 of a cup of olive oil in my pan. And we're not like super deep frying, which is why we're able to use olive oil here. As you might know, it has a really low smoke point. It's not made for high temperature cooking. But if we keep this kind of more at a medium to low or medium heat here, this shouldn't get too hot to where it causes a weird flavor. All right, now a typical standard breading procedure would have breadcrumbs in it. But in this particular dish, we want it to have just like a light, a light breading on it instead of it being like super ultra crispy. And so it's gonna go like this. We're gonna do, get this out of the way. We've got our seasoned meat nugget. We're going to go into the flour. Okay, I'm going to use my clean hand to move the flour onto there, and then I'm going to pick it up with my other hand, and I'm going to coat it into the egg. I'm going to make sure the egg gets all over the place. And then now that this hand has been in the eggs, it's never going to touch the flour again, only just to put the meat in, and then this here goes in like that. And we do a second coating of the flour, and boom, there's our nugget. All right, one down. So again, we do our flour. We can do a few at a time while our oil heats up. Then into our egg, use our other hand. Otherwise you'll have some gunky, floury, eggy hands, and it'll be hard to work through that. What a great job to have kids help with. Anybody really, this is a very simple dish. Right. So in your recipe, when I wrote it, I talk about wet and dry hands. So that's what I've got going on here. This is my dry hand, this is my wet hand. Oops. And in nobody's kitchen is this not going to be messy. It's a messy recipe. I love serving my chicken fried steak alongside glazed carrots, but you could do any vegetable would be great to go along with your cornbread as well. And again, pressing that flour into the meat, that way I know it's all fully coated. And I can see the seasonings in my flour, which I love. That tells me I probably have enough seasoning in there to kind of combat just that very bland taste of flour. Start with those. So again, in a typical standard breading procedure, like if I were making chicken nuggets, for instance, my third bowl would be panko breadcrumbs, and you could certainly do that on this particular dish too. You would just have something that comes out a bit more like a schnitzel, which wouldn't be a bad thing. It'd just be a little crispier. Shaking off a little excess. Ooh, I can smell my oil heating up, and we're going to talk about how to know when that's ready too, because you don't want to dip your steak in there and get it going only to find out it's not hot enough. Now, if you're trying to have a little less cholesterol in your day, I think egg whites would work okay with this. You would just need a whole lot more of them. And then again, like I said, you could use a gluten-free flour if you're trying to look out for that. I think all the gluten-free mixes these days are pretty darn good as substitutes. All right, last two. Turn my heat down because I can see it starting to smoke, and that's exactly what I don't want it to do. So we'll let it cool down for a second. And look at how many nuggets we got out of here. Instead of just having 4 steaks and 4 servings, now we've got lots of little bite-sized gems here. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna wash my hands and then I'll be right back and we'll get to frying. All right, we are ready. Our oil is literally perfect. Our chicken fried steak nuggets are pattied and ready to go. Little side note, maybe you're having a gathering and you want to have these nuggets, like I said, as an appetizer or whatever, however you want to serve them. This is a great place to stop. You could literally bread these the day before, have them in the fridge, and then cook them the day that you want to serve them. So it's a great recipe to be able to do ahead of time to kind of speed yourself up in the kitchen so that you can enjoy time with your guests a little bit more. All right, so I've got my oil in here, again, 3/4 cup of olive oil. You'll notice there's quite a bit in there. I'm not deep frying. I'm not completely submerging meat underneath oil, but I am pan frying, so I do need quite a bit of oil. Excuse me, because the moment I put all of this steak into there, it's going to absorb that flour and kind of take some of the oil from the pan. So that's why we're using a little bit more. I'm going to add some butter into my pan just because I like the flavor of it. And I can cook with butter at a high temperature as long as I had some oil to bring the smoking point down. I'm going to immediately start adding in my chicken fried steak. I think you should be able to cook at least 8 pieces at a time. You do want to be careful to not overcrowd your pan because then you're more like not boiling, I want to say, but steaming instead of pan frying. And you won't get the crispy edges that we're really looking for here. And the crispy outer coating. You want it to be able to stand up to that gravy and not fall apart. And so you can see I was really sizzling it first, then I added in my meat. This brought down the temperature of my oil, So now I need to adjust my flame again. So now I'm going from low back up to kind of like a medium. That way I can keep this sizzle going. Alright. I was able to get a really nice batch in there for the first one. I'm just peeking underneath and not lifting at this point. What I'm looking for is like a golden brown fry on this. And we are almost there. I'll let it go for just a touch longer. Maybe I'll bread a couple more pieces in the meantime. And you can see, I don't know if you can see in the pan. I'll try to tip it a little bit. But you can start to see the edges are curling up. They're looking really, really extra crispy. This is a really good indication that these are ready to flip. Also, you can kind of see this liquid forming on the top. This is a great color that we're kind of going for. And rather than using those tongs, which is going to knock a lot of the breading off, I actually brought over a thick spatula. Oh, this one's perfect. Right here, that's what we're looking for. Nice crispy golden edges, nice and crispy on top. Working my way on through here. And then you're going to want to have somewhere for these little steak nuggets to go once they're done being fried. As I use my fish turner, I'm always flipping away from myself so that I don't get grease popping back at me. Aren't those looking gorgeous? And I'm noticing that my oil is starting to get really brown. So I'm going back down to low. But this is about where I want to keep the cooking experience at. And I don't want to burn my oil. It's actually really important. The oil is going to become part of our pan sauce here. We don't want to have to clean our pan. We just want to be able to wipe it out. So we need to keep things from over browning and stop it at browning. And we do that just by controlling the flame and the heat. These are looking beautiful. It smells wonderful in here. A couple of these I just wanted a little more crisp on the other side, so I'm giving it a little flip. The reason it's called chicken fried steak is we're using the same process in which we would use the fried chicken. So that's why. All right. And there we have it. Now typically I would do this over like a grate so that my grease kind of, fell off of the chicken fried steak. But in true Southern spirit, I'm going to use the paper towel so that it just sits in its own delicious fat and grease. I feel like I have to do that. And now my skillet is ready to take the next batch here. Tongs this time to lift it into there. I didn't get that sizzle I wanted right when it went in, so that tells me I need to turn my heat up a little bit again. So I turned my heat up again. I'm now harboring just a little bit over medium, and I'm already getting those bubbles right back the way they need to be. And we'll do another batch of these, and then we're going to pour out our grease, and then it's going to be time to make some gravy. making the gravy from all of the brown bits on the bottom of the pan is very customary in French cuisine and lots of cuisine. Cannot waste all that flavor that you built from cooking your meat. It's important to use that in your sauce so that you get more flavorful sauce. Smells wonderful in here. There we go. There's our last batch in. Pretty delicious. And so again, we're starting to see some of those brown, crunchy edges form. And we're starting to see that liquid make its way to the top, telling us it's almost time to flip. Hopefully you can hear all the delicious crackling and sizzling that we've got going on here. This one looks like it's ready to flip. Look at that, it's literally perfect. This one, maybe not quite yet. This one looks pretty good. We got our yummy brown and nice golden crust. With these others, they kind of went in a little bit later, so we'll give them a little bit more time in the pan there. If you want to temp your meat, you can. We're looking to go about 145 on this particular dish. You do want the meat pretty well cooked. Pretty tasty. All right. A little salt on after too. And these babies are almost ready. And then again, don't let that oil in the pan get too brown because we're going to use that for our gravy next. In the meantime, I'm going to check on my cornbread real quick. Here. Wait till you see that. Look at that beautiful cornbread baked right there into that skillet. It's got a nice spring back when I touch it, which is what I'm looking for there. Beautiful. Something I really love to do with my cornbread is make a honey butter. So you can do this with hot honey if you like a little spice. What I have here is just some softened butter and some regular old honey. You can whip it, you can stir it, you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to mash it together just to keep things simple. And then as soon as that comes out of the oven, you're going to lather that on. To give you this beautiful shine. And then serve the rest of your honey butter on the side. That's a nice picture there, isn't it? Look at that. Beautiful bread. That came out wonderfully. Can't wait to try the sweet potato in there. Just something different. You can see that it's pulling away from the edge of my pan so nicely. That tells us the bread is ready to release, and it's going to have a nice release. And you can just scoop this out, or you can cut it into wedges. All right. One more little turn on our meat, and then it's time to make some gravy to go with these nuggies. Perfect. Onto our platter. All right. Add a little more salt to that. We'll keep the salt off if you don't want it. It's up to you. Next, we're going to pour out some of our oil so we can start making our gravy. So everybody's going to have a different amount of oil. Just kind of depends how hot you cooked your dish. There's a lot of different factors in there. But I know that I have a 1/4 cup of flour, and that's what I need to match. So I'm making a roux in my pan first to tighten things up here. And a roux is equal parts flour and fat. So I'm keeping a good amount of fat in my pan. I can always add a little bit more back in if I want. And I'm going to sprinkle this with my flour. I'm going to get my whisk ready. And I'm going to start building my roux in the pan. If things look like they're starting to get too dark, then turn your heat down. If you get a little bit too much flour in like this, no worries. You go right back and you just add a bit more of that grease back into the pan. And just knowing that we made the chicken in here is just going to give this gravy all the flavor it needs. So we're looking for something that kind of resembles like a paste. And I think we have really achieved that here. And we're going to make a brown gravy, so we need kind of a brown roux. And that's going to happen naturally just because we've already got all the brown bits. All right. And once we have that all cooked like this, we're going to add in our milk. About 2 cups of milk. I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit so that this is getting really bubbly and delicious. And then we're going to add in our milk and whisk. And then we're going to let that flour do its job. Constantly whisking out all those lumps. We want a good amount of heat on this gravy so that it can cook out any lumps that want to form. So that it can cook off that raw flour taste. Oh, look at that. Very nice. Let's see if we can get a close-up of that real quick. Oh, that looks like a nice gravy. Great thing about gravy, too thick, add more milk. Not thick enough, add more flour. Or keep cooking is a better opportunity here. That looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to do my seasoning again. And before I add too much, I'm going to taste it. Just to kind of see where I'm at. Tastes great, just needs a little pepper. This is a little thick. I might add just a tiny bit of milk back in. But the flavor of it is great. It does need salt, even though we had salt cooked into the dish. You still want to add salt to your gravy. We'll add just about 2 tablespoons more of milk. I just want it to be more like a dipping sauce, since we're using our recipe as a nugget instead of a knife and fork steak. There we go, that's much better. Alright. Do a little plate up. Some of our gravy sauce in the bottom. Put a couple of those cute little nuggets on top. Alright, and now I'm going to slice into this beautiful bread. Oh, I can't wait to eat this. Haven't had it in a while. I think I want a big slice. That's a big slice, all right. Here we go. Look at that, folks. Gorgeous crumb on there, too. And of course, just need to get some more of that delicious honey butter right on top. There we go. There's our 2 dishes for today. We've got our southern skillet cornbread amped up with a little bit of our baked sweet potato, added some cinnamon and nutmeg in there for some extra flavor, and then topped it off with a whipped honey butter. Yum. And then over here we've got our chicken fried steak nuggets with a little bit of our pan sauce chicken gravy. Yum. I hope that you all enjoyed this episode today, coming to you from Morton, Illinois, on Southern cooking. And today we picked 2 of my favorite dishes that I hope that you will share with your family and your friends and others for years to come. We'll see you back next time for another great video.